Live Show. My name is Megan Boitano, and today we're talking about something that's been on my mind to bring up for quite some time, but it's really felt like a bit of a hot potato. Christine and I were chatting here just a few moments ago before we went live that there's really no other topic that gets the most level of conversation in different groups and forums. And really, I couldn't think of a better person to come on and talk about this than Christine. She's actually a second time guest now on the RD2RD Live Show. And I feel like I've known you forever in the online world. A couple of years seems like forever.
Right.
But I love how you get to the point about things, whether you're making a comment in a group or in your podcast episode. You're just not afraid to go right to the heart of something
Yeah.
and talk about it. So I think you're the perfect person to come on and talk about what to do when your RD career isn't fulfilling and you're having those thoughts about, should I throw in the towel? Should I pursue something else? Maybe this isn't for me. I'm not making enough money. I'm not getting enough recognition, on and on.
Mm. Mm.
My degree, I spend a lot of time, a lot of money. So these are all of the comments and the feelings that I hear from dietitians. So before we go
Mhm.
into all of that, I want you to tell us about yourself, your career pathway, and give us some background.
Sure, sure. Well, first and foremost, just thank you, Megan, for having me again. I love being able to connect with other dietitians. I'm really, truly passionate about that. So I really appreciate you having me on. For those of you who are here seeing me for the first time, my name is Christine Dyan Thompson. I clearly am a registered dietitian. I've been in the industry for about 27 years now. I feel like I've lost count, but probably around 27 years. And um, I I got here because I wanted to initially become a doctor. I think a lot of times people who get into this field have and it's not always, but a lot of times someone starts out with one thing and then dietetics just kind of divinely shows up in some sort of way for us. So I wanted to be an OBGYN and help bring babies into the world. And in the first track of pre-med, I realized that I didn't want to do all of that. I didn't want to do all of the schooling. I didn't want to do all of the things. If anyone has listened to my podcast, that's my phrase, all of the things. So I didn't want to do all the things. And um, like many of us dietitians, also, I struggled with my weight in one way or another throughout my life. And someone on campus introduced me to dietetics, and I fell in love. And over the course of the 27 years, um, I have just been doing very different iterations of things, but always stayed very true to entrepreneurship. And in this last leg of my career, I decided that I wanted to have a legacy, wanted to leave a legacy behind. And I wanted to help dietitians realize that they can make even more money as dietitians. It's not like you're not making any money. Like if you're not making any money, then that means that you're not doing anything. And I doubt that that's any of us. But maybe you're not making the money that you want to make. And so my mission is to help to change the industry income standard for all dietitians across the globe, to help you realize that if you're not making the money that you want to make, that means that there's some mindset things that need to be shifted. And here I am. And I
Yay.
love this work. I'm super passionate about it.
Absolutely. And I love your podcast for those of you who aren't already subscribers. It's something that we don't talk about in our field a lot, and it's really
Right.
valuable. So, definitely the Money Mindset Dietitian podcast. So, check that out. So let's dive in here. I hear a lot of frustration from dietitians about pay and recognition for our profession. Can you just
Hmm.
maybe start out with your thoughts on that? Where does it come from? You brought this term of mindset in. Let's dive into what maybe it looks like on the surface and take it down
Hmm.
a level, because the whole goal of our conversation today is to provide actionable nuggets. So we'll
Hmm.
start there.
Hmm. Well, okay, there's a mindset. It appears to be a big buzzword now, right? It has become very mainstream and very watered down, in my opinion. And, us dietitians, we can relate to that, right? Because nutrition is very mainstream and it can become very watered down because everyone seems to know it, right? And everyone wants to talk about it. But I'm here to tell you that I don't teach it in a very mainstream or watered down way. And there is neuroscience behind it. And it is very important that we understand that as well. And so when it comes to mindset, for me, just giving you a little bit of simplicity around it. When I teach mindset, it's all about number one, changing your perspective of a thought and not necessarily changing your thought, but changing the perspective. And then also, it is about taking personal responsibility, taking personal responsibility for your actions and for your outcome. So, like I said a moment ago, if you're not making the money that you want to make in your career, it doesn't matter if you are working as an employee or if you're in entrepreneurship, if you're not making the money you want to make, what is your personal responsibility in that? Instead of putting it 100% off on any organization out there or even your demographic location or whatever, what is your personal responsibility? Because I believe that when you take ownership on your part, that in itself is empowering. And so that's a little bit of how I think of mindset.
I like that. I think the point you made about looking first at what's within your control, I think our natural, it's normal for human behavior, right? For us to look for external factors that are at the root of it. And, you know, I know we talk about entrepreneurship a lot, and, I
Hmm.
spent the first 15 years of my career in the hospital setting, moved very
Hmm.
quickly from a bedside to, into management. And I think, looking at how do you advocate for more pay for dietitians, it's always around nobody cares about how you feel. They care about how your profession is contributing to the bottom line. And people can act on data and information. So,
Right.
even around staffing levels or, having advanced practice dietitians in an ICU or something, when I could quantify the impact on the bottom line of, you know,
Mhm.
that the amount of ventilator days, and when we added this, when you can quantify, things can
Yes.
move. And I think there's a lot of value in being data driven and taking a look at how can I take what I feel and translate that into actionable data, whether that's for yourself or for
Yes.
those key decision makers. If you're an entrepreneur, that could be
Yes.
yourself as a decision maker. What are your thoughts there? Because not all dietitians are
Ooh.
entrepreneurs.
Right, absolutely. And that is where the personal responsibility comes in. That, in my opinion, is really where it comes in. When you are an employee, it is your responsibility to speak up for yourself. And I 1000% agree with you in regards to taking those feelings that you have about your position in that organization that you work for and translate it into actionable data. And those of us who are in this field, we know how to do that. We are scientists, like
Yeah.
we are science based practitioners. So if you already know that you're a science based practitioner, you know how to gather information, you know how to translate it so that it's easily relatable. Why is it that we aren't doing this for our careers? But instead, we want to blame XYZ organization or, oh, the people, there's other people out there practicing that shouldn't be practicing. That is a ton of energy wasted. All of that energy that you're putting in by complaining and blaming, you could be gathering information for yourself. You could be like researching on how you can negotiate your rates. You could be putting something together. You could be like creating a plan of action for yourself and advocating for yourself instead of waiting for someone to do it for you.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really good. I would think it's interesting to get the opinion of also people who maybe aren't in our field. And my husband, who's in science, he finds it always very interesting how much the dietetics field focuses on all of the letters that we have, that
Yes,
somehow
Lord.
those are associated with value as a profession. And he's like, why do people have this copious numbers of letters? Whether he works, as a PhD, as a lot of people who are PhDs. He goes, but it doesn't matter. He goes, I work with scientists that just have a bachelor's degree who are
Yep.
more skilled than some of the PhDs. It's really about what's the value you're bringing, like the level that the pay rate sometimes at these organizations, it really depends on what's the role you're providing for the organization, how much
Yes.
value is there. And I think we get stuck on, if I go get such a certification or I get that I'm worth more, when in reality you're only worth what you're bringing in for that organization. Are you offsetting costs? Are you direct revenue generating? Where are you contributing? And that's when the conversation about money, I think, starts to
Yeah,
happen.
totally. And I could be wrong, but I really believe that it's a self-worth issue.
Mm-hmm.
Having all of those letters behind your name,
Yeah.
to me, I mean, it's gratifying to know that you are like highly skilled and able
Yeah.
to do all of these things. However, if you have all of the letters behind your name and you're still not earning what you want to earn, then there is something within you that you really need to look at. Take a look at this. Why do you feel like, number one, you've absolutely had to get all of the credentials before you can actually get out there and make a difference in people's lives? Or why is it that now that you do have the credentials, you're not actually, making the money that you want to make? And then, as a predominantly female based or profession, women don't like to talk about money. We don't think that we should be making a lot of money or even charging what our services are worth, and or claiming that we are six-figure owners. I've heard many dietitians say to me, or say otherwise, I've just witnessed it, that they don't feel comfortable charging for nutrition services, that people shouldn't have to pay to be healthy. And so then my next question is, why did you choose this as a career? Why? I mean, because most people choose a career so that they can earn money to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you choose a career where you don't want to get paid? That doesn't make any sense,
Well,
you know?
and I think the other concept is they're not mutually exclusive. But I think you made a good point. Like, we don't like talking about money. So if we're going to talk about an action item here, what do you do if you're that person? How do you start to get more comfortable? If we're talking about mindset, talking about that conversation, what are some things that you can start doing? Where do you start?
Where do you start? Say that again, Megan. Where do you
If you're
start?
feeling uncomfortable, you said women particularly in our profession don't like to address the money issue. Where do you
Mhm.
start on yourself? Like, if you're not looking at the external forces, you go, okay, that's me. I've been pointing at X or Y or Z. I am now saying, well, maybe I'm a little uncomfortable,
Yeah.
that's maybe where some real value. What do you do first?
Yeah. I really believe in the power of coaching. I believe that we're not at all meant to do it alone in this life. And in order to get to the next level in your life or even in your career, you need help. We all need help. We need to invest in ourselves. And many years ago, I was coached and I was told, you need to invest in yourself at the level in which you want to grow. And at that stage in my life and in my career, it just kind of went right over my head. I was like, yeah, that's what they say. Now I know better. Now that I have invested tremendously in myself over the years, I really get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you cannot see what you need. If you knew exactly how to get from point A to point B on your own, you would have already done that. You need someone on the outside of yourself to hold space for you. You need someone on the outside of yourself to help validate some of your feelings and coach you through some of your emotions and get you to the opposite side. And you need strategy. As dietitians, we are not so much taught strategy, even if you're an employee.
Right.
Even if you're an employee, maybe you need someone to help you with that strategic move that you need to take in order to gather all that information and create that presentation so that you can negotiate a higher rate for yourself. Because if you knew how to do that, you
Yeah.
would have done it already.
Right. What are there some good, you know, books or, you know, you have, of course, your podcast, but some other like essential reads that people should do if they're, I want to, you know, I want to start moving to learn more about money and mindset, because you mentioned it's a hot topic right now and it's almost like a sea of things I could be looking at. What are some core texts or
Mm.
resources that you recommend?
The first one that comes to mind is a happy money. That's a really
Say that again.
a, a happy pocket full of money.
Okay.
That is a good read. I also like Essentialism is a favorite of mine. Oh gosh, so many books, Megan. But I would start with something like A Happy Pocket Full of Money, which is a very easy read.
Mhm.
And then if you want to really know how to not overwhelm yourself with all of the things and really take your career one bit at a time, essentialism is a tremendous help in that way too. So if I had to suggest something or two books off the bat, I would suggest those two.
Mhm. So this is a little bit off script, but um, the whole concept of a dietitian and how much money that we make, and you know, if you're working in a hospital setting, right, there's going to be, whether you're a nurse or whatever, you know, frontline staff, right, there's going to be a limit to what you can make in any one position. And
Right.
having left kind of that world, you know, I saw that right away, of course, right? I went into
Mhm.
management, but I think there's also that opportunity where, you know, you're going to have to take on, right, more responsibility or maybe more work hours, or you're now managing a budget and people. And I could see, you know, this grooming for a director of food and nutrition, which that was the only option at my organization. I didn't want to manage the kitchen. And I think looking, you know, then I started moving into healthcare quality and was able to pair up with someone there and take on special projects, and was moving into being a dietitian, but I liked quality and data and metrics and looking at what I was good at, and actually moving. I would still be a dietitian, but working in the healthcare quality department. I think sometimes our mind is, I want to work at the bedside, but I want to make infinite amounts of money. And I just don't feel like that's a realistic expectation. And maybe that's hard truth out there.
Yeah.
But having that perspective that there is a ceiling and you can advocate, but it's not going to be like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe at the bedside. I don't know. I'm just kind of kicking that out there to you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. There is a ceiling, and I believe there's a ceiling in every job, really. There's only so much that you can make when you are working in an employee role, and that's okay, but you have to come to terms with that. You can also advocate for yourself in other roles, maybe within other organizations where you see that a dietitian would be such a great asset to a company,
Right.
and create a position for yourself. And once again, we have to learn how to do that. That is a learning curve. And in my opinion, isn't that the beauty of just the human experience where we get to create what we want to create in this lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
We do not have any limits or boundaries except for the ones that we put up for ourselves. I truly, truly believe that.
Yes. I like that, you know, you brought up certainly entrepreneurship, but that, you know, not everybody, you know, working for
Right.
yourself versus working for a company, that looking beyond, you know, where can we add value in healthcare, and it might not be the traditional way in which,
Absolutely.
and that working at the top of our scope, if we look at, we're very concerned about individual patient care being done only by registered dietitians. If we look at the scope and the knowledge and our education, there's an opportunity to make nutrition more available, but maybe what if that isn't always dietitians at some level or some degree where we're
Yes.
managing those people where there's more nutrition available. We're the top of the food chain when it comes to who knows the most about data and quality and science, that trying to protect, I feel, everything
Mm-hmm.
around who sees people with nutrition is very short-sighted as a profession.
Yes.
Personally, always looking at how do we work at the top of our scope, like how can we be more in the directing, guiding, leading role as a
Yeah.
profession, whether that's outpatient, inpatient, quality, looking at new ways that care is being delivered. There's so much opportunity for us
Yeah.
as dietitians, food companies, and otherwise. I love being a dietitian, clearly.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you're saying because essentially, to break down what you're saying is dietitians need to be in more of leadership roles because we have that education and so much training behind our ourselves. We don't necessarily need to be in the patient care role all of the time. Now, that is not to
No,
negate
no,
those
no.
who are in that role because there's a place for
And
everyone.
our
How
expertise, like some conditions and things, like how do we find a way, right, where we don't have to be having turf wars all of the time around.
Yes,
We need people to have
yes,
safe, quality care, but we're spending all of our time and effort when we could be leading nutrition, like making sure we're not
yes,
missing the big boat for the tiny little ships.
yes, yes. And we should be leading nutrition. We should be instead of worrying about what the oh my God, I really don't want to, I don't like to down talk anything or anyone or any profession, but instead of um worrying so much about those who are non-credentialed and all of that, why not put energy into just being the leader that you are really truly meant to be? Why not? I mean, you have an entire career, you have an entire maybe two degrees and maybe even some more credentials behind your name. Why not put yourself in the role of leadership? And that is to me how we let the public know exactly who we are and what we do instead of waiting for any other organization to do it for us. Because, in my opinion, that is just not fair. Like, why would you wait on someone to say your name? Why? Okay, like if you were in a crowded room and you know that you have all the goods, right? You have the cure to cancer, right? But you're waiting for them to call your name. You're waiting for them to call you when you should be actually raising your hand and say, hey, I've got it. I've got what you need. But no, you're waiting. They should know. They should know that I have the cure to cancer.
Right.
No, they don't. Not until you raise your hand and say, here I am. I have the goods.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing and ready to deliver them.
Mm-hmm.
Do not ever wait. Go ahead and create.
I love that idea of creating, I clearly I'm someone who loves technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting in my experience as a dietitian, I was often, as a dietitian, we have a lot of experience with technology perhaps, and at the bedside, and I personally looking at, I would get pulled to work in IT to help coders learn how things happened at the bedside, and I would be helping make workflow diagrams for disciplines that weren't mine. Like, how do we do value by design, and where are the value added elements? Like, what are you good
Mm-hmm.
at? You don't have
Yes.
to. Your skills can be put together in so many
Oh
interesting
my
ways, and
God.
I
Yes.
think we get so locked into maybe what we were trained to do that your career is so much more diverse, so much more
Yeah.
complex, so much
Yeah.
richer than we can give ourselves credit for. And
Mm-hmm.
I know we've kind of, if we're talking about wanting to jump ship, you don't have to jump to a whole new ship. I feel like there's but I think, let's say we're in our career right now and we're not satisfied, we want to jump ship from where we are. How do we start taking stock of our skills? And then there's, risk, or what kind of questions can we ask ourselves? You mentioned getting some coaching. What's the
Yes.
first thing you do with someone who shows up and is having those kind of statements? What do you help walk them through?
Well, one of the things that I really have been working with my current clients on is helping them really step into what they truly are passionate about. A lot of times, especially when we're um, later in our careers or maybe even mid-career, we have taken some time in our personal lives and even in our careers, and we have forgotten what we truly love. We have forgotten what our gifts are. And so I believe in passion and purpose and blending that with the field of dietetics. If you are not doing that, then the job that you have is going to be somewhat unfulfilling and you're going to feel like you want to quit. But I can almost guarantee you, if you blend your true gifts and talents with this field of dietetics, everything is going to unfold for you in such a miraculous way. I mean, like, we are not just plopped here on the planet because we're meant to struggle through. And we are here with things that have been embedded in our DNA and our coding, our special, unique gifts that we are meant to utilize as a way to be of service to others. So when you push those down and you start to believe, no one wants to do that, or, oh, maybe that's not really, something that can match with dietetics, then you're going through life kind of just on a survival mode when you could be really thriving.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, wise. And I had some comments here of people who were, yes, like, this is important, important conversation that we're having about the we and I versus what others are doing, kind of
Yeah.
looking
Oh my
within
gosh.
ourselves. So, okay, you mentioned something in that little string of conversation here about,
Mhm.
well, I your recent podcast episode that I thought was great. It was on kind of privilege, and thanks
Oh,
to Erica Jolson for throwing that out. She shared that a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago. But you said something in that podcast which, like, hit me so hard, and I actually wrote it out, and I have it, like, on my
oh, good.
computer. But it says, every time I jump ship on something, it just presents itself in a whole different way. I
Yes.
have to go through the process of learning a certain lesson. And that
Mm,
when we're jumping from something, are we running from something, or are we really turning to something?
mm,
That we always have this. It's like it just happens again. It's like deja vu. So that statement of every time I jump ship, it presents
mm.
itself in a different way. And
It
I
really
was
does.
wondering if you might share that, or if you see that with other dietitians. Like, what does that look like?
It looks like just what it is. It's like, I can use myself as an example. And I believe that's where that came from. And I just want to preface this by saying every single podcast that I do, I never re-listen to it again. So a lot of times I record it, I don't edit it. It's out there. And honestly, a lot of what I say is like divinely just coming through me and I'm the messenger. So I just hearing you like reflect it back to me what I said, I was like, "Oh, wow, I said that. Okay."
Yeah, you did.
So so yes, but I can relate to that and I know where that came from because that was me. That was me at one time. I was jumping ship all of the time and every time I would like stop doing something, maybe because I'm frustrated. Oh, this entrepreneurial journey is just for the birds. This is too hard. And then I would go back and get a job. And then the next thing you know, I would have a very similar situation in this job where after 90 days or so, I just was like going through the motions and I hated every minute of it. It was the same thing, just kept presenting itself over and over and over again. And it wasn't until I made a conscious decision that I was going to stick with it no matter what, that I was going to like be as passionate about it as if I was doing my work for a source outside of myself. Like I always say, God is my CEO. So if God is my CEO, I know I better get on it and stop playing around. So when I had that mindset shift for myself, that is when everything changed for me because I was more consistent. I stayed committed and I gathered a passion, which is this work that I'm doing. and everything just unfolded. But when we are jumping ship, it's like you quit the course before you pass the test.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have to pass the test to make it to the next level.
Right.
Like if you don't pass the test, then you have to take it over again.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to pass our tests. We have to stop jumping ship before we graduate to the next level. Otherwise, you're just going to have a new test, maybe just a different situation.
Right. I think those I was at like the jump ship criteria that I think we're looking for someone to say, yeah, you should move on, or that we're looking to affirm that we're actually staring at something that's kind of scary, right? That, it comes up, it's these feelings of inadequacy, or I'm not sure that I can do it, that they're fear and it's self-doubt. And sometimes that's really terrifying. I had an experience early in my I think it was in high school, and I had to do public speaking, right? And I completely forgot. I was up in front of a big group. It was a prepared speech, and I totally blanked out. I had to walk off the stage. It was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, right? Mm-hmm. And for a long time, I let that fear, right, that might happen again, get in the way of me, moving forward in my career, because that job or that role might require me to do that, and I was embarrassed about it. And so really it was that fear. And now I actually really enjoy. Prepared speeches are not my jam, right? Talking points and I can go, but if I had to memorize something and speak it, I would never be able to do that. But I think being able to face that fear and go, well, I can't necessarily do it that way, but how can I move past this? That it's not a stopping point. There's a way around, right? There is a way around. And I think sometimes it's that fear. It's fear.
Yeah. And then it sounds to me, Megan, like you actually recognized your uniqueness. Like I may not be able to do it this way, but how can I do it to still like make it effective and keep moving forward?
Right.
So when you recognize your uniqueness and then you step into that, you can do the thing. You just may do the thing a different way. And that is beautiful.
Yeah. So I liked your point about, something's going to present itself in a new way, and that sometimes it's looking at that with a new perspective. And you brought that up early in this conversation.
Totally.
About looking at it from a different perspective. And I think sometimes having a coach, like you mentioned, or having an outside influence, it's hard to get perspective when it's your view. You can't. And I think we do that with our own clients, or we do that when we're, other relationships sometimes, and you can't see that without a coach, right? Without counseling, without involvement, expecting to DIY it. We know it's difficult for nutrition. So why do we expect it of ourselves in something as complex as money and our career and our profession, which is highly complicated? So really good points there.
Yeah.
All right. So this one's fun. How do we have more productive conversations around the topic of pay, and what that's not happening right now should be happening?
How can we have more
productive conversations around pay?
Give me an example of a non-productive conversation.
Well, if I say, that we see the necessarily finger pointing, but the conversations that I'm unhappy about the amount of money that I'm making, or dietitians aren't paid enough, or reimbursement, that we're one person. How do we, if I'm observing that conversation, it seems like it becomes the feelings and emotions, and everyone's feeding off of one another, and there isn't really this, I don't want to jump in and say, hey guys, what could you do from your perspective? How do we be productive? Because sometimes I think people just want validation. They just want someone to go, oh, that's awful,
1000%.
So there's times where people really, they want you to hold space for them. You talked about that. There's a difference between, I need space. I need someone to just let me go through the feelings that I'm having around this, that's very
Yeah.
different than let's have a conversation that's action focused, that what can we actually do. So these are two different kinds of
Yeah.
conversations. And how do we make sure, like, if you were to go, let's be productive, and someone's over here and needs space, it's just never gonna
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah, yeah. I just needed an example because there's so many ways that we can have conversations about how to make more money and all of those things. But I think it's really important to, instead of commiserating in groups, I want to encourage you to think about how you can take action differently. How can you create? How? I always tell my clients, how is a better question than why. So a lot of times with these particular conversations, we're like, oh, well, why is it that the so-and-sos are making all the money? And why is it that this organization is not helping us and advocating for us? And why is why is why? Instead of questioning the why, question the how. How can I be a better advocate for myself? How can I take even the very first step? I want to tell you guys, every single one of you listening, whether you're here live or on the replay, you know the answers. You know the answers. And if you don't know the answer, you know how to gather the information to get it. You know the answers. My my biggest teacher always taught me to question myself and let my brain give me the answer. And that was like the biggest thing she could have ever taught me. That's how I've become even more successful in my career because I know how to coach myself. You know, I still have a coach, but for the little day to day things, I just ask my own self. So I just want to say, like, when we're having these non productive conversations, first and foremost, let's stop because that's a waste of energy and time. And instead, let's have more productive conversations by posting, if you're in the Facebook groups having these conversations, posting a how. You know, I can almost guarantee you, number one, you'll come up with the answer first on your own, and then you'll get better quality answers instead of other people's opinions and commiserations on something that's not going to help you in the end. So ask how.
I think that's a tough thing because it takes the focus on here to how is focused on yourself. And I think that's an important shift and a really useful nugget.
Yes, it's a hard pill to swallow when you have to recognize that you actually play a role in where you are right now. And a lot of people don't want to accept that. They will still, to this day, there will be some people who say it's not my problem. It's not my fault. It's XYZ's fault.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who just absolutely will not take any responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not here saying you have to take full responsibility,
Right.
but partially. Like, what part are you playing
Mm-hmm.
in the fact or in the circumstance that you're not making the money you want to make? What part are you playing? Even if it's a small part, you can take action on that small part.
Right. No, I think you've given a great deal of kind of insight. And I think a lot of this gets back to what you said about you oftentimes have the answers, but it's kind of scary sometimes to go there. It's difficult to kind of tune into some of the wisdom that you necessarily have, and take actions that really push you to think about yourself in ways that maybe you haven't um, done before. Uh,
Yeah.
that you're capable of. A lot of us maybe didn't have a lot of people who were positive about what we could accomplish in our life, or maybe we've had people who've, brought us down before, or maybe it's every time you think about putting yourself out there, you remember, like I remember the time that chief of staff like ripped me down and told me dietitians were 100% worthless, and if I'd have let that voice overpower my desire, I wouldn't have been able to expand the ICU staff. Like, who can I find as an ally? And I'm just going to turn the volume down of that person. I can't make it go away, but I'm just going to turn the volume down and find something else that I can power up a little bit, some other ally. And I think, it's easy to let that conversation always dominate, whether it's a negative experience. So much about mindset. I think this is a great topic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is a great topic and it's a necessary one. And I just want to end by piggybacking off of what you say about, some of us may have had these experiences that have led us to where we are. And while that is definitely true for a lot of us, including myself, like I was not born with a silver spoon. I had to overcome many trials and tribulations. Oh my God, I probably need to write a book. Honestly, and if I can overcome things, so can you. But the question is, are you willing? Like in answering the questions of how, in my opinion, yes, they're challenging, but they're also empowering. Like when you find out that that you have the answers within you, to me, that makes it everything. Like, you mean I have some answers that are going to pull me forward and I don't have to go out there and get validated all the time, and I can trust myself more. And even if this answer only gets me a smidgen of a way, I can still continue to move forward. You mean I can do that for myself? To me, that's empowering. So, again, it's all about how you think about it. And you have a choice to either think of it as challenging and scary and all of these negative things, or you can choose to say, wow, that's empowering to know that my brain has the answers. And for the answers that I don't have, I can get the support that I need.
No, I think 100% on point today. Christine, as always, I admire you, the work that you do, the value that you bring to our profession and the voice that's needed. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. How can people connect with you, learn more about both your podcast, your coaching that you offer, any other resources?
Yeah. So, oh Lord, moneymindsetdietitian.com. I almost forgot the name of my website because I'm a crazy pants person right now.
Aren't we
So
all?
I know it's like this whole past 90 days or so has been just one big long day. Moneymindsetdietitian.com. And you'll find all of the things there that you need to know about me, my work. Um, and the podcast can be found on just about all of the podcast platforms. And the name of it is Make More Money as a Dietitian. Like, you ought to know you can make more money as a dietitian.
I think you
So,
have a free guide too on your website people can download.
oh yeah, the free guide is the Money Mindset Reset workbook. I am so proud of this workbook. It came from a 14-day challenge that I did in my private Facebook group, and you'll find out about that if you download the workbook. But I did 14 days of teaching, and everything that I taught, including the videos, is embedded in the workbook. And I'm so proud of myself for creating that. 65 pages of awesomeness.
Oh, so, go get on that. I will make sure to link to that.
Yes. Moneymindsetdietitian.com.
Awesome. Christine, thank you for being here. And for those of you with comments, I totally hear what you're saying. I think we are all kind of on this together, that we can do this. And I just challenge our profession to do the talking about the how and the why. And I think you mentioned the commiserating that we see. Well, I think there's a place for holding space for people. I think we can start with ourselves and say, instead of, is this a why answer or is this a how answer? And it can start with you. Maybe you can't change other people, but you can start to, before I respond, I'm going to ask myself, is this a how or is this a why, a why kind of answer? And I think that's one thing you can do. And even when you're reading the comments, you can start to go, oh, that's a why, that's a how. I think oftentimes things start with awareness and then
Yes.
action, and then you can start to recognize your own thoughts and start to think about when these things come up. You can start to have more perspective and do a little more self coaching. So,
Yes, absolutely right. Great summary.
yay. All right,
I love it.
Christine, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
You
It's like that
too.
one long day. I'm like, I don't even know what day it is.
I know, right? Same.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. As long as we're all here together doing our thing.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, thanks for being here. 2 weeks from today, we have Ashley Stewart from Ashley Stewart
Ooh,
Assistants coming on to talk about how to use a VA in your business.
that's
Hello.
good.
Super jacked about talking about that topic. She's going to do one of these things, standard operating procedures.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. So hope you'll be back in a couple of weeks for that. All right, everyone.
Mhm.
Till next time. Bye.